Okay.
Good morning, Cynthia. Good morning, LinkedIn.
Good morning. Happy
We are
Thursday.
Happy Thursday. We are here again, inviting you to join us for a conversation on Thursdays with Culture Talk. I am Teresa Agresta, not to be confused with Culture Talk, which it says on my name. I'll rename myself. I am one of the founding partners at Culture Talk, and I'm joined today by Cynthia Forstman, my co-founder, and my sister. I am here in Saratoga Springs, New York. And Cynthia, where are you today?
I know I have had a summer of remote working and road tripping. I'm actually in Crested Butte, Colorado today, where it is absolutely stunning. And I'm getting ready over the weekend to go to a plant camp. So with a girlfriend of mine. So yeah, Crested Butte, Colorado. It's a unbelievably awesome little town in the mountains.
Well, nice. We hope to hear about that one next week.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's like a survival camp. So wish me luck.
All right, we're wishing you luck. And it's appropriate because we are in the middle of the roadmap series. So we have been on a little tour of what can you do with the results of a Culture Talk assessment, whether that's an organizational assessment or working with the individual tool. How do archetypes not sit still and gather dust like many reports or many assessments that you might take? Why is this different? And why do these assessments not get stuck on a shelf or somewhere in a drawer? So this week, our focus is to look at brand and how do you use archetypes as a starting point for meaningful, purpose-led brands. So we're looking forward to diving in on one of our favorite topics and one where we have years and years of experience and stories to share. So it's particularly near and dear to our hearts. But before we do that, we'd like to share with you two upcoming opportunities where you can go a little deeper yourself and learn more about this work. So if you've been following us for a little while and you're intrigued to kind of try it out a little bit, two chances to do that. One is an invite-only event. So if you're interested in this one, you'll have to follow some of the links below or shoot us a note and say you'd like to get an invite to attend Two Sides of the Culture Equation. It's an interactive, immersive experience that we're creating. We'll do it in 2 sessions. They're going to be somewhat small. So if you want an invite, please make sure to reach out. And we will be about an hour and a half each session, giving you exposure to these ideas in this work at a deeper level. So a chance to play with the ideas.
Come play.
Exactly. And then on September 6th, we are kicking off our next round of certification. So we will be welcoming cohorts at 10 a.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And that's to accommodate attendance from different time zones around the world. So our certification program enables you to take these ideas and actually deploy them, bring them out to your clients or to your team if you're an in-house leader and you really understand and want to grow with the application of these ideas. So that's who we are. That's Culture Talk. And Cynthia, would you dive in and share with us the backstory, the backdrop on the brand conversation?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think branding with archetypes is a topic that probably has more traction already. And the history of that traction began with the book that was published. I should have noted the year before we got on, but it was around the time that Teresa and I had started a little marketing agency called Allegory. And the book was called The Hero and the Outlaw. And it was published by 2 women, Carol Pearson and Margaret Marks. And what Carol is a Jungian researcher and academic person who at the time was based at Georgetown University. Margaret Marks was working at the time for Young Rubicon. And Carol had been doing research into looking at archetypes and archetype patterns and how do they show up in organizations. Her focus of research was on organizational development. And she met Margaret Marks, who was like, wow, this is absolutely fascinating when we see these patterns in an organization. And then we also look at how the marketing and the brand and the outward expression of the organization is coming through these patterns and how those things can be aligned. And so that book was The Hero and the Outlaw. And I think at the time, a lot of different people in the marketing world, we didn't even call it branding, quite frankly, early on and all of that, took hold of that idea and said, this makes so much sense to us and we can really work with organizations with this idea. I had the opportunity to meet Carol Pearson. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. And for me, it was one of those fateful meetings when you're doing one thing, you meet somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, my whole world has been blown apart. And I came back from a workshop and said, Teresa, oh my gosh, I have to share this with you. And over the next several years, we went through a certification program. We learned how to measure archetypes. There was some assessment tools available at the time. And we began incorporating into our client projects at Allegory an assessment that measured the culture and the archetypes of an organization, and then building a process to translate that into a brand story. So I'll pause there, Teresa. And what happened next? That was sort of the early part of it.
So for us, it caught on quickly. And the way that we were able to build on and further develop that application was really strong. And it had, really important implications for our clients. So we would come in, measure the culture, and deliver brands. And then at the end, we would have these deep insights into how the organization was working. Was the leader, also maybe causing some challenges in the culture? Was the shadow traits, or the things that were tripping up the culture, going to hamper the outcomes of the brand engagement? Or what were the missing opportunities maybe for strategy, use of different people in different seats, and how the organization might be able to, capitalize on this information around culture to become more successful. But because we were hired to deliver brands, all of that kind of was untapped. And we left and said, good luck with that. But then our clients would call us back and really begin, and we were putting the pieces together, recognizing that this brand story could also drive employment branding and messaging internally to what it means to be here, part of the team, what the expectations are, what is our internal purpose, and how does that align with the brand and what we're saying externally and to customers. These were really authentic messages that came out through this process, and it was the beginning of reflecting what was really going on here, not some rosy story kind of painted on the outside of the building that said, this is who we are. So this deep expression was exciting to the clients that we were working with, especially owners who time and time again came back and said to us, oh my God, no one has ever seen me this way. No one has understood what I've been trying to communicate. No one has been able to capture this unique expression of what makes us different as a company in the way that this process has done.
I would love to just give like 3 real examples of what clients said, having gone through this process. And I'm thinking about one of our very first clients at Fikes Truck Line, and the president of the company was not deeply involved with the brand process while it was going on. He was a little bit on the outside of it. And then at the end of the day, when he was presented with, this is the whole story of how we're going to position your organization, he said, this is exactly what I have always wanted to say about us, but I never had the words. And so, again, that inside out ability to go deeper and to tell. And I think it's important to because I think a lot of, there are brand agencies that use Archetype, and not to criticize any process that's happening, but to know that there's a way to sort of use it as a layer on top of something. It almost can have like a surface experience where we go, ooh, which archetype story do we want to use, versus the process that we're sharing here, which is more of, we start by that deeper reflection of what is the culture, what is the purpose, who are we, and now how do we tell that story,
right?
As opposed to layering on.
Yeah, so that what we say is a real reflection of how we behave and what you can expect, as opposed to what we think we should do.
Right.
This is who we are. This is how we show up. So it had staying power, it had stickiness. And so those were some of our early experiences around it. And I think what happened is as we evolved was we came to understand this was too good to keep to ourselves. And that we needed a way to get this out there in a broader way and to share these opportunities with other consultants, and that it was beyond brand consultants, although branding was certainly a critical component. And today we find that from a strategic perspective, branders are one of the most successful types of consultants that continue to use this work, because today it really is more important than ever. Back then, the internet was still newish, and it's evolved. But what we know today is that you don't get to control the message the way you used to. So if what you say about your brand and about your organization is not a match to the experience that people have or the reviews that your company receives, then the people that you're trying to attract to your company are going to have other ways to get their information. So they're going to be out there on Glassdoor reading about what it feels like to work for your company. Everything from that interview and onboarding process straight through to a review of what it feels like to work, as part of a team there. So if employees are one of the biggest things that we need to attract today through branding, an emphasis on employment branding. And there are plenty of places that people can go to get the real story. So an honest assessment and reflection of what it feels like to work for your organization, and the message that we're doing these things right, and hey, we know about these challenges we have and we're working on them, is a much more attractive message to potential employees on the employment branding side. And the same thing holds true for that public-facing brand. Today, consumers have all kinds of elevated expectations about what your brand represents. That just was not true in the past. Some of those things, Cynthia, taking a look at what social stance that an employer might take. What are their environmental concerns? Their shareholders go beyond just, or the stakeholders go beyond just the shareholders who are interested in what your bottom line looks like. And people are taking a broader look at so many different aspects of what it means to do business with you.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said about how, employees and customers can see all the way inside the organization today. And that's because of everyone's got a video camera, walking around with it in their pocket. And I think that when we attempt to control and manage, we're telling a story that's inconsistent with the experience. It creates a reputational crisis, right? Instead of having a really strong brand presence that people want to be a part of your organization, when you're not telling the truth, when your brand is not an honest reflection of who you are, you create an incredible
disconnect.
That misalignment and that disconnect really is why, we have we could name companies that have gone through different reputational crises because they did not live up to who they said they were. So again, it's just another reason why brand today is, more and more important. I would love, maybe Teresa, if we could share, we described at a high level when our kind of baseline culture audit process. We do have a number of people in the Culture Talk community that are in the brand marketing, purpose-driven marketing space. How would we, in our certification program, let's talk through what the baseline culture audit looks like. Like, how do we run that project?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that it is so simple to deploy. It's basically 3 steps. So to get clarity around your culture, this 3-step process begins with your organization taking a Culture Talk for Organizations assessment. That assessment can include demographic questions to help you to slice and dice the data that comes out of the survey. But at its base, that assessment is a 96 question survey that takes about 15 to 20 minutes for your people.
It's a validated instrument as well.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And you can do it on your smartphone. You can do it on the computer, on a tablet. So you don't even have to have a population that's sitting at a desk and in front of a computer. Lots of different ways. So that's the first step. Second step is stakeholder interviews. We want to hear their stories. We want to hear their experiences. We're looking to tie the input and the data that we're discovering and see, hey, does this align with the information that's coming out of the Culture Talk assessment? And then the third step is a workshop. It's about a half day long. We'd recommend that you get variety of people at the table to have this workshop where you bring together the 2 pieces of research that have been conducted. Here are the results of our quantitative and our qualitative research. And then it's the opportunity for the people at the table to validate and to really raise their hand and say, yes, I agree with these results. They weigh in, they get a chance to align their own stories with the outcome of the research. And at the end of that session, to develop a culture profile that becomes an agreed upon, profile that everyone can move forward from. So lots and lots of different ways that we can, move from that place. But in the case of branding, it becomes the place from which we will write the language, design the graphics, galvanize the team and get everybody engaged, connected, and on board. Yeah. So 3 steps, it's the survey, it's the qualitative, interviews, and then a workshop. And that's how you begin.
And the reason branders love this so much is because the archetypes and the profile that you build with archetypes are just so rich in terms of concepts, in terms of guiding choices around, visual representation, language, tone of voice, copy, all of those kinds of things that get developed as part of a brand. I'd love to share a quick case study. We sent an email. If you're on our email list, we sent it out right as we were going live. So if you get it and you get a chance to download it later, but it's an organization here in Colorado that we worked with called Walking Mountain Science Center, although it was not the Walking Mountain Science Center when we started working with them. And we'll include a link to the case study here too. But the interesting part, it was an organization that was teaching environmental science as a supplemental program in K through 12 schools and through some adult programming and things like that. And they're a nonprofit, and they had just gotten a donation of land, and they were going to build a campus, and they felt they were doing some capital campaign fundraising. And they knew that their current name, which was the Gore Range Natural Science School, it was problematic for a number of reasons. And so that was part of why they wanted to do a rebranding. And in the process of going through that baseline culture audit that Teresa just described, we worked with board members, we worked with staff, we worked with volunteers that were part of the organization, different community members that had exposure to the organization, to really understand what were the key archetypal patterns that existed. And in this case, the three that came up were the jester, the sage, and the explorer archetypes. And the jester was kind of a surprise to the organization.
I remember that.
Yeah, don't you remember going to that meeting, right?
Yeah.
Because all of the background interviews that we had done, were full of studies. And like, I remember like we would walk out of meetings with like binders and like things that they had studied. And so there was definitely a heavy sage available in that culture. But what we found as we met with people who were experiencing the organization is that, oh, my kids love to go to camp there. Oh, it's so much fun. Oh, the kids go outside and they walk and they take these hikes and they camp. And what was missing from the original brand was this lightness, this passion, this spontaneity that we were really able to bring out through that jester archetype. So if you have a chance to take a look at it, and it totally changed that organization. The president of the organization, Markian Fedishak, was there at the time, and he still says, wow, when you do that inside out work, whatever you create, it lasts. It endures because it is so reflective of who we are. And maybe over time it shifts here and there and you do some refinements, but at a baseline, we nailed that story and that brand. So happy to
well, and I think also, a key takeaway from that experience is they had huge organizational goals that brand needed to drive. The funding of their new campus, that tie to a purpose that was deeper than the programs that were happening. So they really wanted to shift the way that K-12 science education is delivered in the US and really connect kids to the experience of what it's like to live in nature and to understand and want to have this desire to do the research and the hard work of getting out there and tying it back to our living experiences in the world. And so that brand had a lot of work to do to tie the experience that people had when they connected with the organization to the deep mission and purpose that they had, including being able to get it out there by developing the funds and the campus so that could happen. So the case study kind of draws all that out and brings out even photographs of the campus, which do a beautiful job of telling that story. So if you get a chance, check it out. It's really, today, it is so important to be able to tell those deeper stories. That's what connects people at, sort of that heart level, instead of just talking about it from a logical perspective. The ability to connect with them on a human level through story. And I think that's one of the ways, in addition to the longevity that you just referenced, that ability to have people really make deeper connections is strong.
So if you are someone who is working with brands or employment brands or personal brands or helping companies build brand ambassadors, we would love to share more about this process and this work and this tool set that we have built to support those kinds of endeavors. Reach out to Teresa or I. Happy to have you join us again on August 23rd for the workshop. Happy to share more about certification. Happy to share a link for you to take a CultureTalk assessment and just see what it's all about. Or if you're an organization that needs some help in this area of building a really authentic story and a purpose-driven brand, We have on our website a directory of different partners that have come through Culture Talk certification and who are delivering specifically in that arena. And we'd love to help you find somebody that could work with you in our certified partner network.
So thanks for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful weekend, maybe as exciting as Cynthia's.
Yeah.
And we hope to see you again next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.